Good morning, everybody. My name's Damien Ross. I'm the chair for the committee for Ballarat, and I'd like to welcome everyone here this morning on what is a very significant topic on homelessness. We know everyone has a very busy day, so if for the next 2 hours it will be lively. There's a lot to get through, but if we can have everyone present and contributing will be amazing. A couple of things I'd like to do before we get underway, and that is acknowledge that we are meeting on the lands of the traditional owners, the custodians of the land being the Wraparound people. We pay our respects to past, present and emerging leaders. A few important guests. We're lucky enough to have Juliana Addison, member of Wendouree, and Michaela Settle, member for Buninyong, Mayor Councillor Daniel Maloney, Councillors Eddie and Councillors Coates. So thank you for your contribution here today, along with all our business and community leaders. These things don't happen unless there's some energy and effort put in behind it, and we're incredibly fortunate that through the Future Shapers program that we've had a number of participants come together, and this program being led by Rochelle Kirkman, Sam, excuse me for a second, Pam Sutcliffe and Fiona Murphy, who have helped pull this together, and it doesn't happen without the help of the Ballarat Tech School, who have kindly opened up the facility to be able to allow some 110 of us to come together and join in some outbreak groups to talk about this important issue. Also helping it to come together, we've got some pretty important partners, and they are the Committee for Ballarat, Compassionate Ballarat and the Ballarat Foundation, but we've also got some very generous sponsors in the Ballarat Tech School, Breezeway, Celtlink, Committee for Ballarat, Housey House, Integra and RSM. And it wouldn't be possible without their generous support. To kick us off, what we're going to do is pull together a forum, a panel, to actually start the conversation.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I'm really excited to be here with Sonia from Salvation Army, Virginia from Catholic Care, and Adam from Uniting Ballarat. Today we're going to chat about homelessness and set up what the issue is in our community, who's experiencing homelessness, and why we need to know about it. So I'd like to introduce Virginia to start with. Virginia has been employed in her current position at Catholic Care, previously Centre Care, for the last 4 years. Her previous work has included managing community aged care and disability services in a range of agencies. Virginia has worked in the social welfare sector for about 20 years, and she has seen many significant changes and increases in the homelessness space. Adam is the Senior Manager of Homelessness covering Central Highlands, Wimmera and Wyndham at Uniting Ballarat. Adam manages teams to likes of street to home, homelessness to home, housing and crisis support, homelessness entry point, private rental assistance, youth outreach and head leasing. You're a busy man, Adam. Yes. Adam's been with Uniting for 13 years and he's worked across a range of programs. He initially started his career as a youth worker in the northern suburbs in Melbourne with homelessness youth. That was 25 years ago.
Amazing.
Sonia is the team leader of the Mothers Emergency Accommodation Program at the Salvation Army Career Support Services in Ballarat. Sonia is a social worker, has been working in homelessness for 6 years as a caseworker and team leader. Prior to coming to work in Ballarat, Sonia worked in perinatal mental health as a counsellor and educator, and also within the tertiary education sector as a program manager and educator in community services in Melbourne. So during this panel, we'll just have a bit of a chat, but everyone out there, you're also invited to submit your questions through your facilitator to the Q&A function, and we'll get to them later in the session. So to start with, Virginia, do you mind if I ask you, let's just start simple, what is homelessness?
Homelessness is fundamentally insecure housing. So it can range from couch surfing to rough sleeping to staying at mum's, It's when somebody doesn't have their own home, effectively. And we know that the challenge with that, of course, is it's really disruptive. How can you possibly get your life together if you are constantly moving, constantly having to worry about where to tonight? And even, as I say, even if you're staying with family or friends, that gets old very, very fast. So fundamentally, it is that simple.
Thank you for sharing that. I think not everyone in our community actually realises that homelessness is not just what you see, and I think it's quite difficult for a lot of people because in Melbourne, you see quite a few rough sleepers on the street. It's not as visible in Ballarat, is it? But there are so many other aspects to people experiencing homelessness. So Adam, do you mind giving us a bit of an indication of exactly how many people may be experiencing or at risk of homelessness in Ballarat?
Yeah, absolutely, Rochelle. Thanks for that. And look, I've crunched the latest numbers as of yesterday. Excuse me for reading off the papers. I can't really remember in my head. So basically, uniting our entry point effectively runs two priority lists. So one for over 25 years of age, and then one for under 25 years of age, which we call our youth priority list. So currently on our over 25 priority list, we've got 165 households who are waiting for transitional or crisis housing. This totals 310 people who are currently in housing crisis, inclusive of children. Our under 25s list, so our youth list, we've got 67 households are waiting for transitional or crisis housing. This totals 100 people who are currently in housing crisis under the age of 25. Basically, so that means we've got 410 people on both our lists that are currently in housing crisis and or homelessness or waiting for support. So it's quite extreme. The uniting entry point at the moment, we're so under-resourced, we're actually turning away 9 people a day. That's what we call our unmet demand. This can be due to a number of factors, and we sort of won't devour too much into today, but it does go down to sort of lack of government funding to be able to cope with the amount of people who are presenting as homeless. And during the month of September, we actually turned away about 210 people because we just couldn't get to those people, which is really sad for our program, hard on our clients and certainly our workers, because they are trying to help everyone that presents through to our entry point here at Uniting. We have what we call HEF, it's called Housing Establishment Fund, which we use in our entry point to provide cross accommodation for people who do present as homeless. It can be used for a number of things: vouchers, petrol vouchers, hotel, motel accommodation, caravan parks, even as low as tents, swags, blankets, pillows, etc. Usually our yearly budget of HEF is usually about $144,000 per year. Since the commencement of the pandemic in 2019, we've spent $922,000 on people who do present as homeless. So it's almost an extra $800,000 since March last year. So just in that alone, you can see the impact and demand that the entry point has had from our local community, or people in our local community presenting to our entry point for assistance. Our Street to Home team, and Rochelle does know a fair bit about our Street to Home teams. That's primarily our team that works with rough sleepers here in Ballarat. Currently they're supporting 45 rough sleepers in our community, and currently there are about 60 rough sleepers here. We work with about 120 rough sleepers per year, but in the latest statistics, I think we're up to about 75 for the financial year already. We're only 4 months into our financial year, so we're going to well exceed that 120. And as we know, rough sleeping now is becoming more visible in our Ballarat community, and that's due obviously a number of factors as well, which we'll touch on a bit later. So, yeah, so it's not too good, Rochelle.
Yeah, it's really sad, and every time I hear these statistics, I just, it's heartbreaking, having to turn away people because you don't have the resources to help them, and that's what we're here to talk about today, how we can play a role as a community. Sonia, do you mind helping us understand what are some of the reasons that people might experience homelessness?
Sure. It's quite complex. It's fairly complicated. It's no one thing or the other. And it's usually compounding issues that contribute to a family becoming homeless. So the obvious things like poverty, not being able to meet bills and rent and those sort of things. There's often a history of homelessness within the family. It may be intergenerational. There could be trauma that's occurring also within that family, and that trauma could be things like family violence, certainly within our service, being a service that specialises in working with women and children. Family violence is the reason why about 65% of our clients come to us. So certainly that family breakdown and the violence and the not being safe at home is a big contributor to a lot of the reasons why we see families come to us. Let me have a look at my little list that I prepared earlier.
It's always good to have the notes.
I know, right? So they're probably the main things I would say. And I would also, the thing with homelessness is also that when you are homeless, it's hard to get out of that because there are a lot of issues that are contributing to somebody being in that situation. And when you're homeless, it's difficult to address those issues. So if there's struggles with trauma, if there's struggles with violence, if there's struggles with alcohol or drug use, if there's traumas that need to be addressed, it's very difficult to do that when you don't have a stable base. It's very difficult to do that when you don't know where you might be sleeping that night, or the kids don't know where they might be sleeping the next night or where the next meal may be coming from. So the leg up out of that situation is difficult to find because the stable base is gone. Mental health plays a big part as well, and again, it's an issue that's difficult to address when you're living literally day to day and home is not safe and home is not stable, wherever home might be at the time.
Thanks for sharing that, Sonia. I'm wondering if any of you please jump in here. If there's any stories that you can share, of course, keeping identities anonymous, that just might help us get a better understanding of what people are going through in our community.
Well, can I speak about Peplo? One of the things that's happened with COVID is each lockdown has extended people's time staying at Peplo House, which is a men's crisis accom. Normally, people can only stay 6 weeks, but with lockdown, people were able to stay longer. So there has been some positives for some of our fellows. It's actually been really interesting to see how that plays out. Coming back to what Sonia was saying about the stability. It's an 8-bed facility, so it becomes a home. And the guys can decompress, they can start, take a deep breath. When people were staying with us longer, and we've crunched some of the numbers, fundamentally people were getting work, they had their mental health stabilised, they were linked in with a GP and were able to secure housing. They actually had time to do some of those mechanics. And it's really brought it home to me. We have men coming in, a lot of men coming in seeking work. That's one of their primary goals. If they get a job, means they can earn some money, either get their kids back, get a place to live. That's kind of one of those crucial things they need to do. We actually had guys being able to do that because they stayed longer. And when you break it down, if we have somebody come in week 1 and they apply for a job, and then week 2 they have an interview, and on week 3 they get told they've got the job, and this is absolutely best case scenario, as we know it takes a good 6 weeks to get a job and start. So we actually had guys being able to do that. They still had a couple of weeks up their sleeve with us as that stability. And you really, I think one of the things we have to acknowledge, everything takes time. Getting involved with a mental health plan takes time. So if we can offer people stability, and as Sonia says, and I love that, the step up, people have got the time to actually work out what their problems are, what they need to do, and make movement. I know myself, if I was constantly worrying about where I was going to sleep tonight, how can you possibly think about anything else? And then as you add in children and mental health and unemployment and blah, 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 frankly, I don't know how they do it.
Thanks for that, Virginia. And I know there's often talked about that as the housing first approach, isn't it? How can anyone address those complex issues if they don't have somewhere safe and secure to call their home in the first place? Is there any other comments you'd like to throw in, or stories of your time working?
I'll probably touch what you're saying there. Rochelle, you mentioned about your housing first principles and what Virginia's touching on there. When we went to the National Housing Conference in Darwin and had what they call supportive housing teams. So it's a wraparound support model for people who actually, or consumers who find long-term housing. So there's mental health workers, alcohol and drug workers, occupational therapists, case management, the whole kit and caboodle in terms of support. What they found was out of 500 rough sleepers who had attained housing across New South Wales had a 96% success rate of sustaining those tenancies because they had a wraparound support model. And that's one of the other answers. Well, put the supports in. It shouldn't be 13 weeks. It shouldn't be, it shouldn't be time limited. This should go on for as long as it's needed. I know our Street to Home team have a wraparound support team as well, but we support our rough sleepers once they find long-term housing. We're finding 3, 4, 5 years later that we are still working with some of those consumers to still work hard and sustain those tenancies. But you know what? It's actually working. And that's some of the stuff that Virginia is touching on. It's a brilliant model. It should be rolled out right across the country because this is what works. Stop that revolving door back into homelessness. That is one of the primary answers to this.
Absolutely. Yeah, and with our service, we're a crisis accommodation service, so we have a couple of little units which are designed for 13-day stays. And then we have some other units which are designed for about 8 weeks, 10 weeks stay. We've had clients for 2 years because there are no exits. Quite happy to hang on to them. We would never exit a family into homelessness anyway, but there is a benefit to keeping them longer. We can, and as Virginia was saying, that there is a decompression that happens because mum has been so heightened and the children have been so heightened for so long. They're in constant state of hypervigilance. So when they come to us, they do have a moment of decompression, of just settling down, and that can take several months because they have been so heightened for so long. And then if we were following to the letter what we're supposed to do, they'd be out before they'd even had that time to decompress and to collect their thoughts and to recognise and acknowledge and trust that they're actually in a safe place for 5 minutes. They'd be out before, but we don't do that, obviously. They stay. So that then enables us to do a lot more work with the children and with mum around, okay, so what are some of the other things that might be happening within the family? And, for the children that we can help you out with. So we do have that wraparound, that model at the Salvation Army. So we have a specialist children's caseworker, we have homelessness caseworkers, we have other parenting programs that we can refer them to. So there's a lot of stuff we can do in-house, which is quite helpful. So we get the outcomes insofar as stabilising the children, stabilising mum, giving them referrals, and helping mum sort of make some access to counselling or whatever it might be. But the one bit that we can't get is the housing, all right, well, the family's ready. What's that next step? The next step is the more long-term accommodation. That's the bit that we get stuck at. So they stay in our crisis accommodation, which means we can't take another family in from Adam's wait list. And he just let me know this morning there's 27 women and children, 27 family households on the wait list we can't take, and because we don't have any accommodation. We do provide support without accom as well, but there's only so much we can do with that as well. Because essentially, if you turn up at Uniting, it's because you need somewhere to live. It's not just because you need referrals to family violence counselling. There's a lot of other things that need addressing as well.
And that really touches on that we all know, like affordability is the key issue. We all deal with clients that, frankly, if their issue is they can't afford to rent a property, even if a property is available, they actually can't afford it. they're able to maintain a job, they do all the other aspects of their lives quite comfortably. And one of the key things, and we're seeing this over and over, I've been in my role for 4 years, and it's gone from most of our clients, most of the time you could support them to get an appropriate rental, to now we're looking at, overwhelmingly, people on good incomes are finding it difficult to get a rental. Then you add in, all of these other aspects, and it creates logjams, which is awful for the clients as well, because they want to get on with their lives. They don't want to constantly be working with us. They want to get on with their lives. Yeah.
Just on that affordability point, I've heard lots of stories about the number of people that might be applying for each rental property. Do you mind providing some insight into the competitive nature and the lack of vacancy as well?
I think Sonia and Virginia might be best for that one. Well, I think it could be anywhere from 60 plus people.
Oh, we've certainly anecdotally heard that from clients.
60 people applying for one rental property?
Yeah. 60 plus.
And what does that mean if you're, a mum with 2 kids competing with a professional working couple, for example?
It's deflating. Yeah, it's really, really deflating. And they're nervous too, and they're anxious, and they're really scared. And suddenly there you are at a property that you've got high hopes that, hey, this could be my home. This could be a home for my kids. But you get all these other people turn up, people who are dressed well, people with jobs, income, stability, and they're competing against all those people, and it's really, really hard.
And it's rejection too, sorry, Virginia. Some clients apply for 6, 7, 8 properties a week, and every one is a rejection. And when you are already fragile and already not feeling too hot about yourself in some respects, rejection. It's, I don't blame them for not being able to make those applications all the time, to be told no.
Yeah, and if someone can't get a private rental, what's it like waiting for public or social housing? What are the waiting times?
7 years, is it?
Well, we've had families on the wait list now, and our families, our single mums with children, are top of the priority list. They are absolutely the top priority, and we've certainly had families in our one family for 3.5 years. She's been on the wait list, and you can't get a higher priority than our families. And she's nowhere near the top. We regularly check in with housing, and they're great in communicating with us and giving us as much info as they can, but the reality is they're not there.
That's right. I think for a single person, I was talking to the team leader of Street to Home, I think the biggest backdate we've got at the moment is 2015, so that's a 6 years waiting, and been basically homeless, but they've housed people who have been homeless, 15 years plus, waiting for properties. They do have some success as well, because obviously under the Housing First model, bus slips are quite highly prioritised, and I think that's one of the, you touched on our local department office, I suppose there's got to be some credit there.
Absolutely.
We do have a wonderful relationship with our local DWFH housing office. The workers are great. That's probably one of the benefits of having a community like Ballarat. We can have those close working relationships. There's a really great open line of communication, and they're really understanding as well, I think, of our needs, and they do get it, but like us, if there's no houses, there's no options,
Michelle, there's been an emerging trend that I'm seeing, and probably different for these guys. There's people contacting us directly. Overwhelmingly, what I'm seeing is people are ringing me, long-term renters, been stable, got a job, living their lives, have no interface with services. The house is being sold, and that's 3 months, I think, 90 days. They're getting their notice. They're going back, and they're starting to look for a rental. They've got solid rental histories. They can pay the rent. They shouldn't be coming to us, because there's no other aspects of their lives. And yet we are now, this is a real thing. I've had 4 over the last couple of weeks, and the horrible thing is there's nothing more we can do, because effectively their issue is there is no property that they can afford. It's not that they have any other complex issues. They're not really almost eligible for social housing because they're so far down the list. They're not a rough sleeper, they're not a mum with 4 kids.
And that could be you or me, couldn't it?
Absolutely.
Anyone.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the scary part about it.
Yeah, we've got some rough sleepers who are sleeping out one of our lakes on the outskirts of Ballarat there, and they're working. They're tradies. They're sleeping in a tent and swags. You know, they can't even access the rental market.
So if people are waiting on a public housing or social housing wait list for 3.5 plus years and they can't afford a private rental, what are they doing in that time? How are they living?
Well, they can circuit through services. They might spend a bit of time under their come to Peplo. You know, there's sort of this, and that's the other horrible thing is that we all can only do so much work when you can do everything you can and they can really focus on what they need to do. But if there is no property, and that's a really interesting point, a couple of tradies are living out there. We've had tradies coming through Pepper. They lost their jobs in COVID. Once again, never had anything to do with any homelessness services. Lost their job, got nowhere to live, got no money.
Yeah, they're quite transient too. A lot of homeless people, you know, obviously you see breezeways on the corner of Albert Street and Down Street there. The homeless community is quite a tight-knit community as well, but they're very resilient and very, very supportive of, of each other. And obviously they, the Anglicare breakfast as well and soup bus in the evenings for meals. So these are quite a social sort of hub as well. But we do find a lot of rough sleepers and, and homeless people do generally can move on, but we also get an influx of homeless people seeking services, from other areas as well.
So how does it feel for you guys and your staff who are working with these people when you maybe can't give them an option, or maybe you can't help them and you have to go home knowing they have nowhere to go?
It's deflating once again,
It's tough.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the pandemic's also impacted staff as well. Could you imagine coming to work every day, especially for entry point workers and some of our street to home workers, and maybe in some case some of Virginia and Sonia's staff as well, coming to work knowing that, there's nothing I can do today. I'm coming to work, maybe I'm going to put a Band-Aid on someone. Imagine doing that every day in your work life, and our staff are fantastic right across the homelessness networks in Ballarat. They are fantastic, resilient bunch of people, and not be the first one to say this. I couldn't do that work anymore. I don't think. They are a wonderful group of staff. Right across all our organisations. Particularly entry point workers. They're turning away people. The people they are seeing, they can barely assist. It's really, 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 really hard out there at the moment.
Yeah, agree with you, Adam.
Can be quite despairing at times. But I think perhaps for us, because we do have accommodation, we perhaps don't see that level of really intense pointy end entry point stuff and having to turn people away. Our clients are accommodated with us, but we're constantly having those conversations around, well, there's nothing yet kind of thing. And also the accommodation that we have for our clients, although it's good, it's not designed for 4 children for 2 years or more to live in. And our smaller emergency accommodation units, they're designed for 13 days. They're 1 room, and we can have multiple children in that room with mum. Babies, we have to wheel in the cot, wheel out the cot because there's not enough room to keep it in there. There may be some images at some point that you see that there's actually the inside of one of our emergency units, and it's tiny. The backyards are generally concreted and not very big, so there's nowhere for the kids necessarily to run around in the yard. We have a bit of a garden that we've had some funding to build in next to the units that we have in Ballarat. So, there is some spaces for kids to play, but they also have to leave behind their pets. And pets mean a lot to families generally. Imagine having to leave your dog behind. Imagine leaving your cat behind and not being allowed to have another one. and not being able to look after another dog or fall asleep with your cat on the lap anymore. That kind of thing is heartbreaking for children, particularly.
Yeah, we wanted to take a moment today as well to thank everyone who is working in the sector, because we realise just how hard it is and how passionate and compassionate you all are. So thank you, everyone. Just also wondering, has it always been this way, or is the situation getting worse?
There's always obviously been, people presenting as homeless. We've probably seen a shift. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, probably the last 7-8 years, I think, in terms of bottlenecking in social and community housing. I think, when I started off in the entry point around 2000, I mention those times, 2009, wasn't as bad. A busy day, we're probably seeing 2 or 3 people a day per worker, and we'd probably see around 1,000, 1,200 a year. But at the moment we're seeing, the last 12 months we saw about 1,900 people in the last year. So it is increasing. Yeah, absolutely, and obviously for various reasons, and Sonia touched on the rental market and people buying up properties, regional areas, turning properties into Airbnbs and things like that as well doesn't help. But lack of services. Services are there, but they're not funded properly. They're under-resourced all the time. There's long waiting lists. There's lots of reasons why it's probably gotten worse.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely worse. Would you say that?
Oh, God, yes. And it's structural. The reality is that, you can work, let's say you work at Woolies, I don't know, $700-800 a week, take home pay. If you're paying $400 or $500 a week rent, you can't live on that. And I think fundamentally we have to acknowledge that these are structural issues that have been set up over years and years and years, and there's a whole range of reasons why. That is why, they're selling their properties that they're rented, and they have a perfect right to do that. But that means that person who might be an aged pensioner who's been quite comfortably living there for 20 years now has to compete in a very tight market. And the only way that they can get out of that is coming to us. And this is the stuff. It is that I honestly am seeing that there is an increase in, I'm going to say, mainstream people accessing services who maybe shouldn't have to, because they're quite capable of looking after themselves.
Obviously our meals programs, I'm not sure of the statistics, Jen Wright from Breezeways is in the room, but I believe it's in the thousands that are now coming and accessing our meals programs. People who do have those low income jobs, people who have lost their employment, just that sort of demographic is really changing as well. I went down there a couple of weeks ago, or 3 or 4 weeks ago, and helped out, and I say actually see children turning up to meals programs as well with their parents or their mum was really heartbreaking. To get to that stage in life, it's really sad to actually to have to witness that. Once again, it's not just the workers; it's also the volunteers right across our organisations as well that keep these programs running. Dedicating their time, day in day out. The soup bus volunteers at night time as well. Anglicare breakfast, get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and serving up meals. To the homeless people as well. So I think it's really important to acknowledge our volunteers are really integral part of what we do.
Now, I haven't seen any questions come through from the audience yet on the Q&A, so if anyone does have any questions, please put up your hand for the facilitator to type into the box. I think we've got a question coming in now. Well, there's heaps of questions in the chat. Oh, okay, we're using the chat. Let's see how I can access the chat, or maybe my phone's not working.
Someone new to you.
Yeah, all right. I might have to get someone to bring the questions up to me. I can't see them on my phone, sorry.
I'm wondering, what about young people, where do they fit?
Okay, someone's asked, we're wondering about young people and where do they fit in this story. Can anyone help answer that question?
Yeah, well, so look at here. So our youth prize, like I said, we've got 67 youth households waiting for crisis housing with children. That's about 100. We do have youth housing programs that Uniting do detention management for, and the support is split across between Salvation Army, CAFS, and obviously Ballarat Community Health provide that support. But for young people, the the options just aren't really there. Once again, if you haven't got an income, you're not going to be able to access the rental market. A lot of our young people actually do couch surf as well. So, it's difficult for young people, but but there's options are limited.
It makes it incredibly difficult then for start establishing their lives, you know, getting an education, getting into their first job, all of those things.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a crucial time to start establishing yourself, you know. And that's touching on what Sonia's saying, you know, the frustration for people living in a THM for years and years and years and doing everything you're meant to do to change that. You don't get that time back.
Yeah, we have the Creating Connections program is the youth housing program within Ballarat. We have one EFT at our workplace for that, and it's across a couple of workers. One of those workers is actually here today. We have no accommodation specifically for youth within the Salvation Army in Ballarat, but there's Korung out of Windaree, and Horizon House is still going.
Horizon House, yeah, Korung's an 18-bed, I think it's 18-bed youth facility. Supply accommodation up to 2 years for young people who are willing to engage and be involved in a day program, in education and or employment. There's also Bottleneck as well, which is youth accommodation for young people who have significant mental health issues. That's up to 2 years accommodation. Table House is a youth residential detox unit we have for young people as well. That's only up to 13 days. Then we have youth properties for young people who are on youth justice orders or exiting some form of youth incarceration. So there's a wide range support out there in accommodation for young people, but once again, under-resourced, underfunded, and just not enough bricks and mortar to reach out to them all.
Yeah, thank you. Another question that comes through is very fitting for today, seeing as we're all about encouraging community action today. One question is, how can we cut red tape to allow people to give? What prevents agencies building relationships with the corporate sector with capacity to help?
So the first part of that question was cutting red tape.
Yeah, yep.
To assisting.
Well, to allow people to give.
As in?
I think the question is about corporate sector support.
So
Philanthropic funding.
Oh, no. There is obviously mechanisms in place. The challenge is, I suppose there's always this problem of mechanics around that. And I personally think it needs to be driven by government. In some respects, it might be working with developers that they sequester some of their property for housing, things like that. Obviously, people can donate money. Money's always great, but it's the mechanics behind it. I think is always been a barrier. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, we would always be willing and able to talk to the corporate sector or to, do this sort of stuff and tell you about our clients and give you the stats and all of those sort of things, which is what we're here today to do. But I think homelessness, it's not just a house, and that sounds like such a catchphrase, but it's not. There's because of all those contributing factors, they need to be considered. You can't just give somebody a house and go, there you go, job done. It doesn't, you need to heal the other traumas, you need to heal the other hurts, you need to be willing to engage with the children, the guy that's just been out of prison, the rough sleeper under the bridge, whoever it might be. You need to be willing to give them the time and address the other stuff that comes with that person, not just the lack of the house. There's other things that person has that needs healing, that needs addressing, and that's part of the deal as well. It's not just here's your house, you're done. There's other things that need to be supported and addressed as well.
Thanks for that, Sonia, because that is, again, that's what we're here today to do. We as individuals might not be able to address the big housing problems, but what we can do is support people in our community and support our agencies to meet the needs. So we'll talk more about that as the day goes on, and you'll see some really clear outlined actions that you can take in the booklet that was on your seats. We are running out of time. I know there's more questions from the audience, and I'm sure anyone, if you look at your name, the name badges, anyone who's working in the sector would be happy to talk to you, including us here on the panel. So I'm more than happy to have more chats to answer your questions. One thing I've been thinking about often is we've talked a lot about Band-Aids, haven't we? That seems to be, you know, we're always reacting to people in crisis at the moment. Imagine if we could move to early intervention. That would be a good thing, wouldn't it? We'll just leave that thought out there for now. But I just wanted to leave with a couple of thoughts and questions. I'll throw two out there and anyone jump in. What do you see the future looking like? And could we end homelessness in Ballarat?
When we start on the homeless, focus on the homeless one, absolutely we can. In a maybe not speaking statewide or nationally, but I think in a community like Ballarat, it's certainly achievable. I mean, obviously the simple answer is more houses and more affordable housing, and like I touched on earlier, adequate supports for people going into those houses, that wraparound support that they really need. So absolutely, I think on a smaller scale, yeah, sure, why not? We can take some ownership of it. You know, private investors, housing developers, you talk about philanthropic funders, all those sort of elements. Yeah, I can see that happening.
What was the other part of the question?
I said, what do you see as the future, and could we end homelessness in Ballarat?
Oh, humans are incredibly adaptable. One of the things we've learned with COVID, you know, what's happened over the last 2 years. So there is an element of political and community will and willingness. So, you know, one of the things we can all do is actually raise it with our political parties, in the sense that this is actually a really important topic that does need to be addressed, that impacts on everybody. And I think that's the stuff. We think of homelessness as homeless people who are them. It impacts us all. And one of the reasons it impacts us, and it might be even from a business point of view, if people can't afford to move here and get a rental, that actually reduces the amount of our staffing opportunities, things like that. It actually has effects across the board. It destabilises a community. So, I mean, one of the things we can all do, as I say, is really raise it as something of interest for us as community members with our political bodies.
Thanks, Virginia. Sonia, is there anything you'd like to leave us with?
The parting words of wisdom.
Yeah.
No, not particularly. But I think Virginia's point around that it being a community issue and that homeless people aren't over there, they're not the other. They feel the other. The children who are homeless feel being different than the other, but they're not. They're part of our community. They could be the person that you walk past in the supermarket aisle. They could be the person who you're working with that you don't know is couch surfing, because they come to work looking pretty well presented each day. They could be the kid that's in class with your son who actually is homeless and is living with Nana at the moment, but mum's over here and his brother and sister are living with another relative. They're not the other. They're one of us, and Rochelle said before, it could be any one of us at any time. The rental gets sold and we can't find anywhere else to go. That means we're homeless, doesn't it?
Thanks, Sonia.
Love words.
And my parting message is about how important awareness and education and information is. And today now every one of you here are armed with that information. So now the call out to you is to become community advocates for this issue, and tell your friends, tell your people in your workplace so they too are armed with that information. So thank you so much, Sonia, Virginia, Adam. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your expertise, your knowledge today. I'm sure it's been very helpful to everyone in the room. And we might just start off the stage and welcome Damien back on. Thank you.
what a great way to start the conversation. And I think when you get the opportunity to hear firsthand from those that work in it every day and live it, and it's quite confronting. And I think if you're not moved a little bit emotionally this morning after hearing that, it'd be pretty bloody hard to move you, I think. So thanks for sharing it. I loved a couple of key things there. Beyond the house, like thinking about homelessness, about beyond the house, it's the whole person. And I think sometimes that, the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. So it's about being a little bit more connected and a bit more vigilant around understanding and seeing what is there. So thank you for sharing the insights, the stats, and certainly it's a little bit confronting. Just before I introduce Fiona Murphy, who'll take us through the next part, we just had a lovely a note come through from Michaela Settle, the member for Buninyong, who has kindly, reminded us that her door is open any time to come and have a conversation with her about anything that she can do to help from a government funding perspective. So please don't miss that opportunity. The other thing I'd just like to draw your attention to is there are some QR codes that have been displayed on the screens at various times. That is the opportunity for individual donations. So again, please don't miss the opportunity to donate some money during the course of the day. I'm now going to call on Fiona Murphy, who's going to take us through the next section of this morning. So, Fiona.
Thanks, Damien, and thanks to everyone who has come along this morning. Hopefully you found the last session informative. I don't know about you, but I found it quite sobering, and it really reminded me about how privileged we are to go home every night, have a cooked meal and know that our children are well looked after at home. So as part of the Future Shapers group, which is why we're all here today, Rochelle, Pam and myself decided that this is what we'd like to do to raise some community awareness around homelessness. So as part of that, we engaged a lot with stakeholders within the community. And so to formulate today, there was a lot of research undertaken and a group was formed from the Central Highlands Homelessness Alliance. And the group was tasked with pulling together a list of projects that the community could actually help with. So every one of us is sitting out in a different breakout area today, and they're the projects that have been identified from the Central Highlands Homelessness Alliance, so that we can all work on those projects and have an impact on our community and those people experiencing homelessness. So 5 of those projects are going to be presented today via a short video message, with the rest displayed in the brochures that are either on your tables or your seats. So I really encourage you to take a look at those brochures, have a read through, because it really details and lists how, as a community, we can help to have an impact in the area of homelessness. Help can look very different to very different people. So what we do is encourage you to think really broadly today. So help could be volunteering your time or volunteering your skill set for a specific project. It could be volunteering your business's skills. It could be providing a piece of well-needed equipment, or it could be providing a space for a project to be undertaken in. It could be offering training or employment opportunities, or it could even be offering financial support. So we encourage you to think really broadly today about what help looks like. And no offer of help is silly or unrealistic. So what I'd like to do is show you the first video, and what that video is explaining the need for an outreach van and supplies for that van.
I work with rough sleepers, so people sleeping in tents, swags, sleeping bags, cardboard, all around Ballarat and surrounding areas. So there's over 50 in our area that we have on our books, and there's more than that we support. It's nearly doubled in the past couple of months, and we've had a real big influx of rough sleepers in the area. Got a gentleman who's in his 50s who was living in a private rental for over 10 years, no issues, but the owner wanted to sell, so he had to move out, and he's just been unable to secure a house for the past 2 years. So he sleeps in a swag out in Scarsdale with no running water, no toilet facilities. The public housing list is over 10 years long, so for him, he's got to wait another 8 years in the forest to get a house through public housing, and just begs us every time we go there to get him a house. it's heartbreaking. So recently we went up to Green Hill Lake in Ballarat, so that's in our area, and there was over 10 different sets of people sleeping up there. And so we were totally unprepared, so we ran back to Ballarat and went back up there the next day. It would be great to have a branded van that we can go out and people know that it's us and know that we're there to help rather than be really standoffish to begin with. A trailer or that we could fill up with stuff to take to people, that would be really good as well. We go out all weather, raining, hail, shine, windy. So somewhere just to, pull an awning out so that we can talk in the, out of the rain, practical stuff like that. So everyone can help, dropping off a sleeping bag or a yoga mat, to, donating a car or a pop-up tent. All of those things can help. So from kids to mums and dads to big corporations, every little bit really helps and it really makes a difference in people's lives.
Thank you, Daniel, for sharing that really important story. I was there when we did the filming of these videos, and I remember some of the detail around that story, and Daniel had said that the workers had gone out quite late in the afternoon and had come across a whole series of people sleeping rough in the Ballarat area. And initially, when they turned up, people thought it was the park rangers ready to move them on. So the number one barrier was the fact that they didn't want to engage firstly, but also just the thought of they didn't have the supplies to give these people. It was quite late in the afternoon, so the worker had to come back to Ballarat and couldn't go back there to supply people with, dry wood to light fires to cook their meals until the next day. So the need for the outreach vehicle, when you actually hear the detail of these stories, is so sobering and heartbreaking. With all of the projects that we are going to discuss today, if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask Rochelle, myself or Pam. And a number of these projects are going to be discussed around the roundtables and in the breakout sessions later on this morning. What I'd like to do is now welcome Mary Hollick from Compassionate Ballarat to the stage. Mary is going to share what Compassionate Ballarat is doing within Ballarat as a compassionate city, and is going to share some of the work that Compassionate Ballarat has been undertaking around crisis accommodation. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Fiona. Good morning, everyone. I'm so very pleased to be with you here this morning on behalf of Ballarat, a partner in this very important forum. It's heartening so many of you across our city are concerned to respond to our growing numbers. And I particularly welcome our Compassion Ballarat Chair, Ben Kelly, and our committee members here and online this morning. As our panel very poignantly conveyed to us this morning, this is an issue that needs a whole of city approach and one that is framed by compassion. Our City of Ballarat signed the Global Charter of Compassion in late 2019 to recognise the role compassion plays in a rapidly growing regional city facing many social challenges such as this. Eminent compassionate researcher Paul Gilbert speaks about compassion as a sensitivity to the suffering of self and others and a commitment to do something about it. Resourcing ourselves through information and increased understanding is what we want to achieve in a compassionate approach to homelessness. People think that compassion is about empathy, and it is a component of compassion. But for compassion, you have to have some degree of motivation. What you pay attention to has to move you. Compassion is one of the most healing motivations that nature ever came up with. We are healed through our compassionate action. Not all countries accept that homelessness is inevitable. Reykjavik City in Iceland, their council passed a resolution to build houses in 2018 specifically intended to assist their homeless with social problems. The EU Parliament has recently adopted a resolution to develop strategies to end homelessness by 2030. Melbourne City Councils have banded together to say we need to fix this at our level too. What we're doing here today is seeing beyond the stereotypes often presented about who the homeless are. The video clips and presentations provide a gateway to seeing the suffering of our homeless and the context for it: flight from domestic violence, poverty, insecure or insufficient work, injury, ill health, addiction, trauma, mental illness. Each homeless person, as we've learned this morning, is unique, and we discover this and overcome stereotypes when we encounter them closely and truly see them. A number of you here will know the origins of the shower bus, when our dear Father Constantine took in a homeless person, a woman who was in the rain in a car park at the back of his church. He then realised she had an odour. It then occurred to him, where would she shower? So it's by that close and deep encounter. And a motivation of compassion enables us to ask, what has happened to you? What has this done to you? Before judging a person for their circumstances. We're all connected, and when one is homeless, we are all impoverished. When we are all enabled to flourish, our society is healthier. If COVID has revealed anything, it is that we have not been in this altogether. The inequality of our society was laid bare by it, and yet extraordinary and rapid responses to homelessness were found. We need to learn from this. Some 4 or 5 centuries ago in Japan, a lavish technique emerged for repairing broken ceramics. Artisans began using lacquer and gold pigment to put shattered vessels back together. This tradition, known as kintsugi, meaning golden seams or golden repair, is still going strong. The term is now used in Japan for post-traumatic growth, the support system people need to rebuild after trauma that we've heard about this morning. The most critical being relational poverty that many homeless experience. And as we've already heard, it isn't just about the housing. An important part of the work Compassionate Ballarat is working to achieve is linking and strengthening people and resources for a more integrated response to confronting issues. This was made very plain in our Compassionate Design Forum, in the forums we've had with the community, exploring elements of suffering, and through our Week of Compassion, what we could bring together to strengthen our responses. And this gap was identified by our future shapers, Rochelle Kirkram from the Ballarat Courier, Sharon Murphy from Ballarat Health Services, and Pam Sutcliffe from Federation Uni. Give a woman a job, I say. Our drivers and organisers of the forum, and this strengthening and closing the gap is certainly one of the key reasons we're here this morning. Thank you for those few moments to speak with you.
Thanks, Mary. We really appreciate what Compassionate Ballarat are doing and for your support with the forum today. What I'd like to do is now show you the second video, which is talking about the crucial need for storage.
The majority of women who come through our service are living in their cars or in alternate crisis accommodation. Many do come to us from family violence refuges as well. I've worked with a number of women who have been holding on to furniture items that belong to their parents or their grandparents that they've been bequeathed and don't want to give those items up. I have worked with a woman before and she was experiencing homelessness for 6 years, and for that entire time she was paying for storage. At times she was also living in that storage unit. And the items that she was paying for the storage were really mainly photographs of her children when they were young, and the tiny little jumpsuits that he wore when he was a baby. She needed to keep those to continue to identify as a mother and to have that connection with her child. But over the 6 years, she was paying thousands in storage, so it did limit her opportunities to move out into private rental. At times, Macaulay House might get donations of certain furniture items, but we just don't have anywhere to store them. If an agency was to have storage available to them, we would not only be able to move like those items that are so sentimental to clients, but perhaps also store furniture, so that when someone does receive secure housing, we already have some furniture that's been donated that we can place into their home. Storage companies would probably be a big one because they've already got the setup, and understandably they'll have costs involved, but perhaps if there was discounts, or if they have, maybe they could allocate just one storage shed, so that when someone does receive secure housing, we already have some furniture that's been donated that we can place into their home.
I'm sure most of us will agree it's not necessarily something that we think about initially as for people experiencing homelessness they might require, but when you see that video you obviously can see if you do have possessions, what are you supposed to do with them if you are couch surfing or living in your car. So it's really important that we highlight some of these things that, as I think the terminology in the panel was used, mainstream people. Us mainstream people might not really identify as a crucial need for people experiencing homelessness. Storage is one of the breakout sessions, and at present we don't have people in the storage breakout session. So when we do go into the breakouts, I really encourage you to think about whether you can move up into storage, which is on the second floor. What I'd like to do now is keep moving on, and I'd like to introduce you to Andrew Eales, the Chief Executive Officer of the Ballarat Foundation, to talk about some research they're undertaking and how today you can make a difference. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Fiona, and thanks to the Future Shapers program for the opportunity to address today's forum. I think, as you've already heard today, it should be clear to our whole community that the issues of housing security have grown, even if, due to the most unusual circumstances in the past 2 years, it might not have been as visible as in the past. Indeed, at the Ballarat Foundation, we've experienced a considerable increase from organisations seeking support in the last 2 years, and we haven't been able to meet all that need, despite the incredible generosity of our community in donating to our causes. We should not underestimate, as a community, the impact that the pandemic has had on people who we would never consider to be vulnerable, but also what that has meant for those in our community who were already unable to secure basic food and housing needs before the added burden of the health and economic upheaval in the past 2 years. As a community which prides itself on leadership and progressive approaches to resolving disadvantage, it is the Ballarat Foundation's view that no one should be homeless in our community. No one. The Foundation recognises that to reach this goal, we cannot rely on just one solution or one form of response to achieve this outcome. The Ballarat Foundation and United Way Ballarat has supported the community for more than 35 years, providing millions of dollars in funding for projects to other not-for-profits and community groups, and operating our own programs which aim to reduce disadvantage in Ballarat. The Foundation is uniquely positioned to assist in our response to the homelessness crisis. Every dollar we raise locally supports local responses. We are not only parochial in our funding approach, but also in our leadership and advocacy on behalf of the community. The Foundation is currently exploring ways we can build a long-term fund to support housing insecurity gaps which cannot be met by government or other sources. The aim of this fund is to facilitate and grow service delivery capacity and to deliver meaningful positive impacts directly to those who are at risk or attempting to break the cycles of disadvantage. But also, it's to facilitate and support new and innovative structural responses to drive strategic changes. Next year, the Ballarat Foundation expects to distribute more than $150,000 in community grants alone. We expect some of the projects that are going to be discussed today to be considered for that funding. As much as governments at all levels are now recognising and implementing positive policies and plans to reduce homelessness, as you're hearing today, gaps still exist and there are significant and unique local challenges. You'll see today in the various rooms posters with a QR code, which we all love and know the QR codes these days, that will take you directly to the donations page at ballaratfoundation.org. Today, we believe, is a great opportunity to understand the projects and programs which can help drive solutions and start building the funds so that we can start implementing local responses now. In closing, I would just like to thank the forum supporters, including Compassion Ballarat, RSM Cameron, Ballarat Tech School and Integra. And a big thank you and congratulations to the Committee for Ballarat Future Shapers program leaders who have done an incredible job in driving this forum. Fiona, Rochelle, Pam, exceptional. Well done to all those involved for your investment in making Ballarat a better place and working towards our goal of eradicating housing insecurity. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you to the Ballarat Foundation. I think what I really heard when we were listening to Andrew is about implementing strategies and implementing things that can really work to eradicate homelessness within our community. And if I think back to Rochelle's last question with the panel, can we change homelessness in Ballarat? And we heard yes we can from 3 experts within the homelessness working sector. It's really, I guess, heartwarming to hear that today we can actually do something to impact on that and that we've got some organisations that are trying to facilitate that to happen as well. So thank you to the Ballarat Foundation. Now let's watch the third video, and that's going to explain the need for providing some access to training and work experience for people experiencing homelessness.
The opportunities presented by education and training are huge. We know that it's one of the biggest drivers of transgenerational socioeconomic status increase. 60 to 70% of our clients are on New Start allowance, so we understand there's a very strong link between unemployment and homelessness, and obviously if you've got training opportunities you're that much more employable. Certainly programs like the Street program in Melbourne really shows how a tailored approach that is focused on providing skills and employment opportunities to people experiencing homelessness, how transformative that can be. I feel like there's a lot of solutions to the problem or the access to education for our clientele. Some of them might include the opportunity for, say, peer mentors, even just being there in the classroom, being able to say, hey, are you right for this test? Didn't see you at the class yesterday, are you all right? Or even just teaching them the skills on how to cram for a test, for example. Getting people from relevant industries to come along and unpack exactly what a career in certain fields might look like. Say, for example, somebody might have an idea that they want to be a mechanic because they like playing around with cars, but to understand exactly what it takes and what skills they might actually need. And then I think the really big one is we also need employers to give these people an opportunity because you can have the skills, but if you're not given a foot in the door, it's not particularly helpful. So I would encourage employers to, I guess, have a look at people who might have a little bit less on their resume. If we're coming from a fairly privileged background, we might not appreciate the skills that are required actually in an interview setting, and to just give them that experience of a real life interview. It not only builds the skills, but it also builds the confidence to actually say, hey, I was in with a chance with that one. I would like to say to the community that education can really change a story, and it changes a person's life chances, and it just takes somebody to believe in them and to give them an opportunity.
Thanks, Rowan, for giving us a better understanding about what training and education opportunities look like. As you walked in today, and I can still see plenty sitting on the table, so I imagine there's many around in the other breakout areas, we've been provided with sandwich packs. I encourage you all to take one of those sandwich packs. These were kindly provided by Breezeway, and it's an example of the meal provided by two people experiencing homelessness. I'd now like to ask Jen Wright, Program Coordinator from the Breezeway Meals Program, to come forward and to share with us about the important work that Breezeway is doing within our community. Thanks, Jen.
Hello, I'd just like to say thank you for allowing Breezeway to have a few minutes here today. Breezeway is is uniquely Ballarat, I suppose. It's an initiative that's been operating in Ballarat for 25 years. We operate 365 days of the year, and we provide 2 meals per day for anybody that presents. One of the things that's interesting with Breezeway is that it's actually not just homeless people that access Breezeway services. Often it will be somebody that has limited cooking facilities, limited cooking skills, but also has a need to have some access to support. With Breezeway, it's been quite frightening over the last 2 years. I've been with Breezeway now for 2 years, and when I look at the statistics, in the 2019-20 financial year, we provided 25,000 meals. That was 5,000 hot meals, which was offered in a seated mode in a cafe situation, and 3,000 sandwich packs similar to what you have available to you today. And please do take one. Last year, with the pandemic, we had what we thought was a huge increase. We provided 35,000 meals. So that was a 10,000 increase on the previous year. However, it hasn't stopped. In the last 4 months, we have already provided 17,000 meals. 9,000 of those are hot meals, and a further 8,000 sandwich packs. On those numbers, we will have doubled the requirement for Breezeway to offer meals over a 2-year period. So we've gone from 25,000 to 50. It's fairly frightening. The other thing that's really interesting with Breezeway is that we are unfunded. We survive and we are able to offer this service only with the generosity of the local community. Uniting auspices the setup, so they give us the walls. They give we have, through some fantastic funding and support in the local community, been able to put in a new kitchen. We've moved to a new site. That has been the one thing that has allowed us to actually survive this increased growth. We get donation of food from local supermarkets. We get Ballarat Foundation support, which is amazing, and also support from small bequests and just general donations. Breezeway also operates with 1 staff member on site per day for 5 hours. So we are feeding up to 100 people a day, 2 meals, with 1 staff member and our volunteers. We generally aim for 4 volunteers to work with us on a daily basis. Sometimes it works, sometimes we only have 1. I know myself, we're having trouble with staff in that we can't find staff. We've been looking for the last 6 months for a relief staff member, just so that our staff can get a break, and also to cover one of our weekends. It's an interesting exercise. We're finding that we're suffering from the very same problem that most hospitality is at the moment. There is just huge staff shortages. People have changed industry. So with Breezeway now, we're finding that our volunteers have always been vital, but they're even more important now. So what can you do to help Breezeway? Just be there for us, keep being there for us. If you are looking to volunteer, certainly come and have a chat. There's always something that we can use some help with. But probably the biggest ask I have at the moment is if you know anybody that is looking for work in the hospitality industry who has some commercial training, somebody that would like a couple of days a fortnight. That's all we need to get us over the line. So since we've been trying so hard to get somebody out, to apply for a position, I'm putting the big call out. If you know anybody that would like to come and have a chat to us, we do have a position available. Probably the final thing with Breezeway, in addition to addressing food insecurity, one of the big things with Breezeway is we offer a social connection for people who quite often would be isolated otherwise. It's really important that people who are in an isolated situation have somewhere safe that they can come to. With Breezeway, we don't ask why you're there. If you turn up at our door and you need a meal, we feed you. It's as simple as that. But we also are a soft entry point for people who are in a marginalised situation. It's very hard to walk through the front doors of somewhere like Uniting and say, I need help. It's much easier to walk up to a counter and say, can I please have a meal? And people do return. We get people coming back on more than one occasion. And we find that over a period, they get to know us, they relax, and we can find out what other services they require. And from that point, we can then ask them to move forward or invite them to, speak to one of our other staff members who can assist them with finding services they require. The other thing that's been quite frightening in the last 12 months in particular are the number of families that are presenting. We're seeing families who otherwise would have managed, struggling because of this, the isolation of the lockdowns. Also, simply the fact that the kids have been home from school and they're eating mum out of house and home. So we have at least 14 families that come and visit us regularly. One in particular I rather like, when she comes to pick up a takeaway meal from us, she tells the kids they're getting takeaway tonight. So it takes that stigma away. And that's one of the things that we're very aware of in Breezeway. You're not coming to get a free meal, you're coming to eat with us. So that's pretty much all I can tell you about this, but just remember that, there's going to be 50,000 meals that we'll be likely to need to put out this year. So any support that Breezeway can get, being unfunded, is always an important part of the way we work. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Jen, and thanks for the amazing work that Breezeway do. The Future Shapers group took a tour through Breezeway Kitchen earlier this year, so we've seen firsthand the amazing job you and your volunteers and your staff do to supply those 50,000 meals to the Ballarat community, so thank you. I'd now like to take you through the fourth video, which talks about the need to create opportunities for driving lessons for adults.
Some of the barriers for people getting their licence could be that they can't afford professional driving lessons. They don't have their own informal supports. They completely lack family and friends, community support. It could be the difference between getting their a job or not getting a job. And it also reduces their capacity to look for other housing options, which further exacerbates their condition. One young person that I've worked with was under 25. She has young children who access childcare that isn't within close proximity to her house. Mum suffers from severe anxiety, so she can't use public transport. That's been a real challenge for her, and it's meant that her children have missed out on, childcare if other family or friends weren't able to assist in that transport. Another young person also who I've worked with has had, significant issues with utilising public transport. She just didn't have the skills. She's got an intellectual disability, so she's never learned. She actually put herself at risk with other people relying on them to take her to appointments or take her shopping or any of those types of things. She stayed in relationships that weren't necessarily healthy or safe for her. I once supported a young man who we were successful in getting some external funding to enable them to access some professional driving lessons, and through some informal supports as well, he was able to get his licence. He then went on to become a qualified chef, which is a really great outcome for him. Some of the potential solutions to this issue is having access to mentor drivers for adults who aren't eligible for existing programs, so an expansion of services. It could be that they've got access to professional driving lessons that they otherwise wouldn't be able to afford. I guess what we've seen over time is that access to these pivotal courses and programs, it works. You know, with adequate funding, we can support people and they can absolutely do and achieve great things.
Driving lessons for adults is also one of the breakout areas, so I encourage you, that's on this floor, I encourage you, if this is an interest or where you think you can contribute, to join that breakout group when we do breakout. What I'd like to draw your attention to quickly is in each room there are the two posters. Andrew mentioned the Donate Now poster. There's also an Everybody's Home campaign. So Everybody's Home campaign is related to a campaign that has been put together. It's really about working together to call on our government to bring back balance to the system by asking for 5 things that will help ease the system and give everyone a place to call home. So all you need is a name and an email address to pop your details into that campaign. So I encourage you to Google it, and I encourage you just to join that campaign as well, because everyone that joins it is going to help. Our last project, what we'd like to show you, is the importance of providing school holiday camp programs to those who may be experiencing homelessness.
Quite often the young people that we work with in the homelessness industry are very isolated, and they don't often get many opportunities due to financial barriers or social barriers, and often they're just stuck at home for the whole holiday period. One of the greatest impacts that we see for young people who are so isolated is that they miss out on a lot of opportunities that their peers get purely due to financial difficulties, and that's something that could be easily overcome if they had the support required. I've got a young person that I work with, and they were offered the opportunity to go on a school holiday program that was very selective for a particularly high-scoring group of young people, and they were offered this opportunity, but they chose not to go purely because they couldn't afford to, and it would have been an amazing opportunity for them to have to help them with their future schooling and education, and purely on financial reasons they chose not to go or even apply. Some sort of scholarship arrangement or funding pool that we can draw from to help sponsor kids to actually go to these camps and get the opportunities that they would have otherwise had would be an extreme benefit to these families. Funding is beneficial and removes that major barrier that a lot of families face, but it's not just all about the money with this. It removes that disadvantage and that gap they have between themselves and their peers, just purely based on opportunity. And I think that that's a really, really great opportunity for kids to have a childhood and normal experiences to build their social and developmental skills.
Thanks, Jasmine, for taking the time to highlight this issue and how some extra support can really make a difference to young people's lives. What I might do now is hand over to Damien, but just remind you all to take sandwich packs with you. I'd also like to thank Housey, who provided us with the space to do the 5 videos, so thanks to Housey. And I'll hand you back to Damien. Thanks, everyone.
We are going to run out a little bit of time because of, I think what we've just seen is so powerful, and we didn't want to cut that short. The power of stories are incredible, and I think when you can get people to open up and show the vulnerability that has been shown then, it's incredibly powerful. So I'm going to hand over now to Pam, who's going to take us through how we're going to get into the breakout groups. Thanks, Pam.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you have had the opportunity to think more about the projects. They will become the breakout sessions. So those videos tell you the story, and now you have the opportunity to actually have your say as to what we can achieve, hopefully. The project story and video invite for this forum today were produced by David Lynch and his team from Lynchpin Media, and we want to thank David for his amazing work. He did a huge amount of hours in editing with us, and I think you'd all agree they're absolutely brilliant. I'd now like to ask Nicole Snibson and Grant Berryman, some of our Future Shapers project team members, to talk about the potential for further conversation around a health hub.
Thanks very much, Pam. Firstly, I'd just like to thank you to Fiona, Pam, Rochelle for everything that you've done today. You guys have done an absolutely tremendous job. So Nicole and I are both current Future Shaper members, and in our spare time we're both also nurse unit managers at Ballarat Health Services. I'm in the emergency department and Nicole's in surgical services. So we're here today to really talk about the health aspect of homelessness. So we know that early intervention and preventative healthcare is vital for people to enjoy good health, and access to healthcare for people in insecure housing is not always as easy as what it would be for other people. So I guess what we're looking at is if you're a person who's currently, in hospital and we're looking to get you home, and home-based care is what we're sort of moving towards, how do we achieve that if you don't have a home? We understand the benefits of home-based care. We know it is a really good model and it supports, the healing process. So we've undertaken some very initial investigating work in terms of the models that are out there, and we know that there's some various models that we can put in place, but we'd really like to know from the community perspective how we can integrate that into what's already existing.
So what we'd really like to know is what services that are already out there that we might not know about already, what you see is in the community and what you see as a barrier to accessing healthcare. We'd also like to, we're interested to know what's useful, what gaps you see as present, and basically we're just open to hear your thoughts on how we can move some of our healthcare from emergency to more preventative, and then also to help to consult basically you who know this area better than what we do. Grant and I both work in the healthcare providing area, but we have an inkling that we know what we do, but we don't know what you do, and we'd really like to know what you do so we can help marry that up. So the Health Hub will really be about telling us what you think, and then us being able to get some sort of report together. And we'd like to be proactive in health. There's always health delivery, but we'd really like to move into proactive and helping people, because as Grant said, there is a move. It's very hard to have healthcare at home if you don't have a home. So we're being very quick, we're mindful of time. Thank you
very much.
Thank you, Nicole and Grant. I actually look forward to hearing how the breakout session goes. I'm sure there's going to be lots of input in that one. As part of our preparations for today, we met Renee, who is a true testament of the difference accommodation can make in someone's life. Let's watch Renee's story.
I was homeless for roughly about 7 years because of domestic violence. I was with an abusive partner. It was a very short-lived relationship. In that time that we were together, it was pretty full on. And I didn't feel safe in the property that I was in after it ended. So I just left the property and become homeless. That's how I became homeless, because I didn't know the other options that I had. Because even taking out an intervention order on him didn't stop him. It's pretty bad not knowing from pretty much from one day to the next where I was going to be, where I was going to get my next meal from, if I was going to be warm enough, stuff like that. It's not good. It's not good for your mental health. It's not good for your health at all. I've got type 2 diabetes, and that really suffered. I've stayed at friends' houses where I've slept on their couch. Had to pay them full rent to stay there, but I've still had no where to keep food or keep clothes or anything like that. It's just somewhere to sleep on their couch, maybe be able to heat up a meal or something if I'm lucky, and have a shower, and that's it. All the fights and arguments that I was getting into with my brother-in-law and my sister, and knowing that they, at any time, they could say to me, "You've got to leave," and I could have literally been out in that gutter and had nothing. Like, I wouldn't have had nothing. I'm not the person to really ask for help. I didn't want to go out and ask for help because I thought maybe there's people out there that were worse off than me. I didn't realise actually how bad my situation was until I stopped and took an actual look, and then realised, what situation I was in, and I did actually need help. For some reason, I felt within myself that I was ready to try and get back out on my own and try and start again to get back in to public housing, because I know I can't afford private, not when I'm on just Centrelink benefits. To start with, I was too scared to go back out on my own because of my ex. I didn't want him to find me. I found out that he passed away around the same time that I applied for public housing, so that was another reason that I also felt safe about getting my own accommodation, because I didn't feel in fear that he was going to find me. I think it was just under 12 months when I got the letter to say that they had a unit for me up here in Ballarat. I was so excited, and poor Jules, she just had to keep on reassuring me that the unit was mine, they're not going to offer it to anyone else. And for a very long time, I didn't have any teeth. I had them fully removed probably about 10 years ago, I think it was, and I was walking around with nothing because my old dentures didn't fit, and then I lost them and went out and got my brand new dentures. And I haven't stopped wearing them since. Absolutely love them. I want to get into social work to help out other people like myself. I want to get into a course to do that, but from what I've seen, I've got to have a higher education level. But I've got year 10, or equivalent to year 10. I don't know how to put it into words. I'm not good at putting things into words. But everything that Uniting's done for me has made my life look so much better than what it did. What makes me the happiest? That I got my life back, and that I feel free.
Renee is with us today, I believe, in the training and employment room. And once again, I thank you, Renee, for giving us the opportunity to hear your story. It takes a lot of courage to be able to do that, and it still makes me emotional. It was truly an honour to meet you, Renee, and I look forward to hearing about your studies in the future, hopefully at Federation University. I now want to take a moment on behalf of my fellow Future Forum organisers to say a very special thank you to all of the service providers within our district who work tirelessly to support the homeless. Each and every one of you deserves to be recognised and personally thanked for going above and beyond in a very tough environment. It has been an absolute eye-opener over the last few months to hear about what you're all doing, and I look forward to being able to make a difference. Can I ask everyone here today to give a round of applause as a thank you to all of our hard-working service providers. I also want to take 1 second to say thank you to the Ballarat Tech School. I'm sure everybody is impressed with the facilities here today, but more impressed that this entire venue has been donated to us for free, with all of the live stream, and the staff have gone above and beyond. So thank you very much for your support of such an amazing forum today. You have already heard about some critical projects from the videos, but these are not the only projects that will help our community. We now have the opportunity to move into breakout rooms to discuss further critical homelessness issues and proposed projects. Again, these projects have been identified as part of the Central Highlands Homelessness Alliance Working Group. The breakout rooms consist of accommodation, driving lessons for adults, health hub, school holiday camp or program, outreach vehicle and supplies, storage, training and employment for people experiencing homelessness. The ideas that came out of these discussions will be collated for us as forum organisers and will assist to progress the proposed projects. We are allowing 20 minutes, if possible, for these discussions, and we'll ensure you're back together in this room, or at least close to the 9:30 finish. We'll now move into the breakout sessions. For those watching online, please note that we'll be back in 20 minutes. Thank you.
We could keep the conversations going for at least another hour or so, because that's how rich they are and how important the conversation is. So apologies. We had planned that each group would come back and share some of the highlights out of each of the sessions. Due to time and with your permission, what we'd like to do is consolidate all of the information that comes out. Everybody has one of the Ballarat Where Are You Sleeping Tonight brochures on your seat. If you haven't, there's quite a few just here on a trestle. Please take one of those with you as you leave as you leave today. Excuse me. Really important, because we can continue to add to that. Couple of things to tidy up on, and again, we have thanked a number of people during the course of the day, but I'm going to do it again, because forums and sessions like this cannot happen unless we have great supporters. The Ballarat Tech School, absolutely brilliant, to put a show on like this and make the interaction not only for the people that have been able to make it here, as well as those that are online, outstanding. So thank you. Breezeway, wonderful job, providing not just the community, but what you did for us today as well. Centrelink, Committee for Ballarat, Federation for University, which I know have put a lot of time and effort, Pam, to help pull this together. Housey, Integra and RSM, great supporters. And there's a whole lot of others that do goodwill that sit in behind it. So our sincere thanks. Ballarat Foundation and Compassion Ballarat Services, incredible. I want to make a big call out to the Future Shapers program. Start of the year, always challenging to try and determine what are the projects that we want to get in and get our hands around. To be in this room today and see exactly what's possible for our emerging leaders is incredible. So to Alan Jackson and her team, well done. It's so encouraging. A couple of takeouts from me. The panel, we started off with Virginia, Sonia and Adam. We got a feel about the impact and the insights of what homelessness means. We also got a great reminder of what's being done, but we also got a great reminder of what's possible. And I think that's what's really important. It is about what's possible. Couple of key things that I picked up from Andrew. Nobody should be homeless. And I go, that is so true. It's up to us to help make that happen. Mary, compassion is driven by passion. And I think there's a lot of passion in the room for making this come to life. Jen, to double the number of meals that Breezeway do in the last 12 months, and you think about 50,000, it's incredible, amazing. I'm going to leave you with this, and it's something I've learned over my time, and I subscribe to it, and I believe in it, that you have to touch the heart before you touch the hand. And I think that this forum today has absolutely touched the heart. So let's get out and make a difference.